Over the past 3 years, something has been changing in the way I play games. Namely, I started depending on the minimap less and less, and paying more attention to the game world around me. That little handicap has managed to open a world of possibilities for me, to the point I wanted to start experimenting with games that had no minimap from the start, or gave me the option to disable it for myself. Far Cry Primal is one of the many games I wanted to truly put this personal experiment for playing without the minimap the most. Ubisoft games are infamous for having a game map that gets more and more cluttered the more abilities you unlock, and thus it starts burning players out by giving you what many consider a list of chores. For the sake of this review and my playthrough, I disabled a number of elements from the game, including some tutorials, notifications, and of course the minimap itself, with a bigger emphasis on playing using what I noticed with my own eyes and some of the skills the game provided. Does this improve greatly on the infamous Ubisoft formula? Let's find out step by step. Far Cry Primal puts us in the mammoth woods of Takar, a caveman member of the Wenja tribe. You and your hunting party are looking for a mammoth to hunt as your group is risking starvation. But just before you can get some food, everything goes south. Your entire hunting party gets wiped out, Takar's brother dies, and now it is up to him to search and reunite the Wenja, as they have been scattered over the land of Oros due to constant attacks from rival tribes and hostile wildlife. For a Ubisoft game, this is a very refreshing premise. Most Ubisoft games tend to start as revenge stories, so for this to be more about gathering your people so you can all survive together, I am more than happy to welcome this. This makes the game feel more like going on a proper adventure, one of survival, discovery, and hunting. In this adventure, the main objective of the game is to gather all the main specialist members of your tribe. Finding them makes up the bulk of the first half of the game. Meeting every one of these members and convincing them to join your village is like going through small little story arcs, as you have to do a number of favors to them before they can leave their huts and move over to your place. This is where most of the variety of the story lies. Every specialist has their own personality and their own set of skills that will help your people survive. And more importantly, in a move I find really awesome because it bridges the gaps between story and gameplay, it's finding those specialists that unlocks your main skill trees. In most games, especially Ubisoft games, upgrade systems are just there to make you feel like you are progressing. And in worst cases, they tend to not make sense at all, like say, do something a number of times and suddenly a weapon shows up in your inventory. Here, the reason Takar gets to unlock all his in-game skills and abilities is because the specialists are teaching him that, with one skill tree being Takar himself, as those skills are actually what he's learning along the way. And you do need to unlock several of those skills. Remember how I said the Wenja tribe was scattered due to attacks from rival tribes? This game complements the danger of wild animals with the cannibalistic Kuram in the north region and the pyromaniac Celos Isila in the south. Both have beef with your tribe and both are more than ready to hunt you, unless you hunt them first. So how do we go about this adventure? How do we find our specialists while also fighting off enemy tribes? By exploring, really. I think this is one instance where the particular Far Cry formula fits like a glove. Every weapon and tool at your disposal needs to be crafted, but not in the everything breaks easily sort of crafting, but rather have the materials to instantly craft it sort of way. That means as you are journeying through Oros, you want to grab some resources along the way. Here's where one of my self-imposed rules came into play. Don't grab resources unless you absolutely need them, or you are running low on them. Same goes for hunting animals or fighting and avoiding predators. This means you become a bit more self-conscious about your resources. You get more careful about throwing your melee weapons or choosing better when to shoot an arrow with your bow, because every shot will count. Same goes for plants and bait. You want to be able to choose when to distract predators and sneak past them, or when to use said bait to land a crushing blow against them. But Roller, you may ask, wouldn't it be easier to just go into Horn Division and min-max everything so you never run out of the resources? Yes, it would. But that will make the game fall into the trappings of a Ubisoft game that is constantly distracting you. This is why I give player expression a higher priority over efficiency. I don't need nor do I want the game to hold my hand and make everything a breeze. If a game is truly open, then I will play it however is most fun for me, and if the game truly has high quality, it will let me get away with it. So playing like this gives a more improvisational tone to the gameplay, and that includes navigation. Without a minimap, it means I am visiting the map screen a little more often. This could be a problem in other games, but for me, it's become more of a way to orient myself so I know how to reach my target. Again, this makes me more aware of my surroundings, and if a route is blocked because it's on a cliff or there is a big fall, I can improvise and look for alternatives, or figure out how to soften my fall. One fun detail I noticed during exploration was that this game rewards how discovering the map feels like. Usually, up until this game, the map itself is obscured. In order to reveal it and its points of interest, you have to climb a tower. In this game, they got replaced with bonfires. They became a little more similar to outposts, except they have a bit less enemies, so you have to both take them out and light up the fire, and that will reveal a higher area. But if you don't feel like going from bonfire to bonfire, you can simply move forward by yourself, because the map gradually reveals itself as you explore it. And there is even skills you can unlock to make the discovery area a lot bigger, removing the need to fall into that chore completing routine. Needless to say, I didn't even do bonfires or outposts until I was well into the last third of the game. Since I'm not going out of my way to do the territory capture for the checklist, what else is there in the open world? Well, since the core of the game is gathering your tribe together under your village, you get many ways of achieving this. Capturing territory will increase the population, but you can also do that by doing either side missions or quote-unquote events. Side missions are small little favors that Wenja tribesmen and women will ask of you. They're like micro-stories asking you to either escort people, rescue people, or do some animal control so life can be a bit more easier for everyone. From what I've seen, they're not limited. Eventually you are going to run out of them, and that's okay really, since they are not needed for 100% completion. Events are the only ones that are randomly generated. Sadly, they are the least interesting ones. There's only 3 variations of it: rescue prisoners, do a little defending, or help the Wenja fight out whichever enemy faction they're up against. I know they exist to help you increase the population, and in the early hours they do feel nice and improvisational, but as I said with my self-imposed rules, you begin to ignore them as they become repetitive and unnecessary. And I can tell you for nearly the entirety of my playthrough, this system actually worked. This made dealing with the snow areas and the cave exploration later in the game a lot more tense and interesting. Cave explorations are little challenges where you are going to do a bit of platforming. Since caves are dark, you want to find and create your own light sources with fire. With how often you end up swimming, that means you can't just rely on making torches out of your clubs and spears. And because I disabled the minimap, it made exploring the cave a lot more fun. Your main objective with these caves is to find a couple of collectibles, and then finish the exploration by finding a cave painting. It's nice and gives you some tiny insight into the land of Oros. I just wish there was a bit more lore on them. Thankfully, the cave escapes have a bit more intensity to them. They carry plenty of environmental storytelling, and they do put everything you learn from the game to the test to see if you are able to make it to the exit. But one of the best highlights, at least for me, was how this game world is constantly moving, even without your input. You can spot a variety of things, from your own people doing their business, to rival tribesmen fighting it out with the animals, to even the animals themselves hunting prey like a living, breathing ecosystem. It was really neat. So in the long run, the open world in this game is rather simplistic. So simplistic in fact that my self-imposed challenge made my journey to every story and side mission a new adventure every single time I left the village. Collecting materials when needed, fighting anything that could put me in danger, and only doing whatever I stumbled upon. Which is great because it made sure the game didn't feel like a chore completing time sink, for the most part at least. That being said, what about the combat and the checklist? Well, since this Far Cry has no guns, no shop, and no real need to grind, a lot of the systems are simplified, and to make things a bit more spicy and fit with the nature theme, you get animal companions. You can actually tame all of the predators in the game, and they become your little pets that you can take with you. This adds to the experience because each animal has their own unique skill. From detecting enemies, other animals, keeping predators away from you, and the bigger ones, you can even ride and use them as your own furry murder tanks to wreak havoc on your enemies. And to top it all off, you get a giant owl friend that can scout for you, and even works as a living airstrike machine, provided you got the bombs needed and you take down anyone who doesn't instantly home in on your location, because unlike other video gaming mechanics, enemies do notice the giant flying owl is obviously being controlled by someone. So with all this expansive stuff, the ground combat should be great, right? After all, they have to make it work as best as possible since they had to remove all the guns to feed the theme of the game. Well, the ground combat is a mixed bag. If you play this game, I recommend you play it aggressive but with stealth in mind. The damage in this game universally takes your upgrades and headshots into account, and for good reason. Once enemies start to get close and personal, the damage punches sadly come out to shine. Tougher enemies and animals can take a lot of punishment, and if they get too close to you, they turn what should be an exciting battle into you strafing and mindlessly poking at your enemies until they drop dead. And they knew this was bad because you can upgrade your throwables so they bypass armor and make dealing with tougher enemies a lot easier. In the case of animals, you better have an animal companion that can scare them away or defend you, because God help you if a mammoth or a rhino decide they want to pound you into paste. I could not figure out how to navigate them without pissing them off. I wish that was the only real negative about this game, but there is a lot more. While my self-imposed plan of playing without the minimap and relying more on my own eyes worked wonders and made this game a lot more fun, there are still shortcomings that sadly come as part of being a Ubisoft game. There are some skills in this game that make it easier for you to find new side activities to do, or to make resources more visible on the minimap. So the more you progress through the story, the more the map begins to get what I'm gonna call Ubisoft clutter. They're perfectly optional and even skippable, but if you play the way I did, it does start to feel a little distracting if you start to find multiple of these in a row, and you are trying to get to your actual goal. Even for me, it started to get a little annoying when you happen to be in the vicinity of a defense event, activating simply by passing near it. Then have the game play the ominous mission fail tune just because you didn't feel like doing it. But the most egregious one, and this one hurts a lot, remember those caves and how they were a neat exploration challenge? They don't net you anything meaningful other than the painting and some XP. Same as every other side quest. It's all more villagers for your tribe or some XP. This game, being the last quote-unquote traditional Far Cry before 5 revamped everything, also has the worst case of collectibles I've seen. 184 collectibles across multiple categories. Your reward for all of them? XP. I mean, at least Far Cry 4 gave you a gun or a skin after meeting certain thresholds. It's also why I am glad some of the side missions are not needed for 100% completion because, again, XP reward. That leveling bar stops having much meaning after you realize you don't actually have a level. You don't get better stats and your only real reward for leveling up is just a skill point. This game is lucky then that I really don't care for 100% completion, and I only bother doing the side content and some of the story related side missions well after the credits roll, because, and I know some won't be happy with me for saying this, I actually love the story in this game. Ubisoft spent a good part of the 7th generation giving you a violent action adventure in foreign lands, only to spend a good part of their stories trying to make you feel guilty for it, using some really great references to some real-life conflicts, only to waste them on some very unlikable characters. Far Cry Primal, it's an honest-to-goodness adventure. Takar and the Wenja are some wacky likable cavemen who are only really interested in surviving and looking after each other. In a complete contrast to Jason Brody, AJ Gali, and even the deputy in Far Cry 5, he actually is treated as a leader and an honorable warrior, and helps most that in-game and in-universe he's still his own man. Every character has something to say to Takar, and he has something to say in return. They do feel very human. Even though he is the leader of the tribe, sometimes Takar does things that upset the other villagers, and in turn, the villagers can act out of line and Takar actually has to put them back in their place. And this is more emphasized by the fact that in this plot no one is truly manipulating him. The conflict between the Wenja and the other tribes is one of survival, with also a nice balance of one of the main antagonists being someone who has a semblance of honor, and the other a more traditional overzealous supervillain. And they even get some of Takar's own qualities to come out to shine, because he's not a scared tourist that happens to be very good at combat. He actually is a full-fledged warrior. You know what the best part is? Thanks to updates, the game now has multiple save files, a survival difficulty, and a permadeath mode. So there are chances to get even more out of this game. There's even a Witcher-style recap that tells you what's been happening in the plot up until your last save, so it feels like you're in a new chapter of a TV show. In general, I believe Far Cry Primal is an awesome game. Yeah, it suffers from a lot of jank, and it would have been a fantastic game if the developers had been able to put a better fleshed out combat system. But given how there's really not many single players made in this style, I am happy this game exists at all. This is why I am happy to give Far Cry Primal a very awesome 8 out of 10. If you need a better testament to why playing with minimal HUDs and maybe cranking up the difficulty gives this type of games a whole new perspective, I managed to upgrade almost everything to its max level by simply exploring, with only a few stragglers left after I saw the credits roll, and I wasn't even aware of it until I saw the upgrades menu. Player exploration continues to be a highlight for these games. I would have loved to see them improve the laser gameplay systems with a sequel. The torch system and the cold meter were great ways to splice up the gameplay, but they were only surface level. But I guess, at the very least, it is nice to see a bit of how Far Cry 5 was being made in this game. I know, unpopular opinion, but for me, this is why I embrace some of the jank. Because sometimes some of the better gems can be found in the least likely of places.